Today we'll be dealing one of the most important current affair for 2017, that is Masala bonds. Students, those who are reading our WhatsApp group, you might have seen lot of articles coming in relation to Masala bond. So today I will be explaining the concept what is called as Masala bonds. So before going to this concept Masala bonds, we need to have an idea what is a bond. It's a very simple concept. Bond is nothing but basically a debt instrument. It is a debt instrument in the sense that when you hear the term debt instrument, try to understand that it is having a liability. It is having a liability in the sense that you have to pay interest for it, and after maturity, when for how long this bond is issued, they have to pay back the principal amount also. In that way, bond are all a debt instrument in the sense that to those people who issue the bond will be having a liability in the sense that they have to pay regular interest, and once the bond get matured, they have to pay back the principal. Already we have discussed this concept of bond. Now, so basically who issues bond? In India, the government issues bond and also corporate issue bond. Government issue bond and also corporate issues bond. We call government bonds as government securities. We discussed when we were discussing money and banking. And regarding similarly, if corporate require fund for their business activities, especially if they want to go for business expansion, then also they can issue bond and raise fund. So bond basically helps the government and also the corporate to raise fund, but the problem with bond is that it is basically a liability. After a certain period of time, they have to pay interest regularly and they have to pay the principal once the bond get matured. So this is all about bond. Very simple. It's a debt instrument issued by the government. It's a debt instrument issued by the government or by the corporate to raise fund for a particular purpose. So government may be raising fund for its meeting its regular expenditure. Business or corporate may be raising fund for their expansion or to run their day-to-day activities. So it's upon to them who raises fund. But the problem with bond is that it is a debt instrument. What do you mean by debt instrument? What has to come to your mind? That it is a liability. Unlike equity. See, when you sell equity shares, you can raise fund, but that is not having any liability. Anyway, I will not discuss equity here. That we will discuss while dealing capital market. Now, for time being, try to understand bond are debt instrument, usually raised by government and corporate. Now, we are coming to the topic, Masala bond. Masala bonds. Now, regarding when you hear this term, Masala bonds, two very keywords are very important. I always tell my students, you also know that in economy, keywords are very important because UPSC asks questions from keywords only. So in Masala bond, two keywords are very important. One, Masala bonds are rupee denominated bonds. Masala bonds are rupee denominated bonds. Number two, it is issued. The issuer, it is issued to, or it is exclusively issued to overseas buyers. So these are the two important keywords or two important points regarding Masala bond. So Masala bond are basically, since it is a bond, it's a debt instrument. It can be issued by anyone, but it is, the bond is in which denomination? It's a rupee denominated bond. Secondly, it is issued to, the buyer are overseas people. So it means that an Indian company or Indian citizen can't purchase or can't buy Masala bond because it is issued only for overseas buyer and the bond is in rupee denomination. It's in rupee denomination. So this is the basic feature of a Masala bond, that it is a rupee denominated bond and it is issued to overseas buyer. Now I will discuss what is this rupee denominated bond. Now normally think about like this. I told you it is purchased. The buyer is a person from outside the country. That is an overseas fellow. Normally when an overseas buyer purchase bond, he purchases bond in foreign currency. He purchase bond in foreign currency, and once the bond get matured, he will get back the money in foreign currency only. But since Masala bond is rupee denominated, the buyer have to give them rupee only. That's why this bond is called rupee denominated bond. The bond issuer, the Masala bond issuer, will be getting money in rupee only, and once it get matured, he have to pay back money only in rupee. So here very important concept is there. It's a very important concept, what is called as currency risk. We'll be discussing in detail this currency risk when I'll discuss the module external sector. When we'll discuss convertibility, I'm not going to that part. Come back regarding currency risk. Now what is this currency risk is all about? Now try to understand. Currency risk happens when in relation to when we talk about convertibility. I'll explain this concept currency risk by giving you an example. Now take this case earlier. So think about a situation in which we'll discuss, see already we discussed so much about government bond or government securities. I'll give you example in relation to corporate bond. Earlier corporates or private companies, when they want fund from outside, earlier corporate when they want fund from outside, what they used to do is they issue, now also they issue it, what is called as ECB. ECB, what is called as ECB? E means external commercial borrowing. Basically it is not a bond, but it's a borrowing. But I just want to explain the concept what is called as currency risk. So earlier corporate, when they raise funds through external commercial borrowing, as the term suggests, it is external. What does it mean? It is raising fund outside the country. That's why it is called external. And C means commercial. Commercial means it is basically issued by the commercial entity or corporate. And third, it is a borrowing. Now the major feature of external commercial borrowing is that it raises fund in foreign currency. We call it as we can call it as forex. And once it get matured, they have to return back in foreign currency. So external commercial borrowing, when the corporate raises fund through external commercial borrowing, they are raising fund in foreign currency, and while it get matured, they have to pay back in foreign currency. Now here I'll give you an example of currency risk. Earlier I'll imagine a situation in which the $1 is 60 rupees. $1 is, now it is rupiah, 60 rupees. That's we have a rupee symbol. Earlier $1 is 60 rupees. Now this company, take the example of Reliance. Reliance want, imagine, see, don't think that when I give an example, for your understanding, I use the word amount is very less. Imagine Reliance is raising fund for 10 lakh. Now for Reliance 10 lakh is a very small thing, leave about this 10 lakh. Now Reliance is raising fund for 10 lakh for a 2-year maturity. And after 2 years, it will promise, imagine like this, it is trying to raise fund for 10 lakh. Now imagine it requires 10 lakh, but the thing is that for external commercial borrowing, this 10 lakh have to be converted. 10 lakh have to be converted in the sense that it can get the money only in, not in rupee, it can get the money only in foreign currency. So imagine near approximately, if the $1 is 60 rupees, imagine like this, he is raising fund for somewhere around 15. So he require around 16,600 and 667. If he raises an amount of for this amount 16,067, he will get 10 lakh Indian rupee. Now he promises to pay back 20,000 dollar. Are you clear? External commercial borrowing, Reliance is raising fund. Reliance is raising fund for $16,667. So it is coming approximately for Indian rupee, it is 10 lakh. So he is calculating, okay, after 2 years, I will pay him back $20,000. For me, it is not an issue. Why? Because if it is 60 rupee, it is coming around, I can pay back 12 lakh. So this company will plan like this. The company plans like this, that since this 10 lakh, with 10 lakh I can do business, with 10 lakh I can do business and I can make profit, and then after 2 years I will pay them 12 lakh. But try to understand that he has raised fund in dollars and he have to pay back how much? He have to pay back $20,000. So he have to raise fund for 16,677 and after 2 years he have to pay back $20,000. Now imagine a situation like this. Situation is after 2 years things have changed. After 2 years things have changed. Instead of 60, the rupee have depreciated to 65. The Reliance fellow was thinking that the rupee, the currency value will be the same. Now here what is called as currency risk. Currency risk in the sense that unexpected depreciation have happened to Indian rupee and the dollar value to rupee have changed. It have become 65. Now the Reliance have to pay back how much amount? The Reliance have to pay back $20,000, but he have to pay in. So now to get $20,000, how much Indian rupees required? He require 13 lakh. He require 13 lakh. With 13 lakh rupee only, because $1 is 65 rupees, $1 is 65 rupees. So to get $20,000 from the foreign exchange market, Reliance person should have 13 lakh. Now here the problem of currency. He got only when he borrowed money from the external commercial, using this method of external commercial borrowing, he got 10 lakh. He raised fund for $16,667 and got 10 lakh rupee, but rupee have depreciated to 65 rupee, and now if he want to pay back $20,000, what he require? He require 13 lakh. So his business plan got changed. He was expecting that the rupee value will continue for 60 only, but it suddenly depreciated. Not suddenly, in the sense that in that time over period, in the 2 year period, it depreciated to 65 rupee. Now if he want to give back $20,000, he require 13 lakh. So this is what is called as currency risk. What happened for the Indian rupee? Indian rupee have depreciated from 60 to 65 in this 2 year period. Now imagine a situation like this. It can also happen like this. It can happen that Indian rupee can depreciate to more than that. If it is depreciating to 70, then to give back $20,000, how much Indian rupee is required? He require then 14 lakh. He require 14 lakh if he want to give back $20,000. Now here is the problem. Now try to understand here. Now tell me, in external commercial borrowing, currency risk with whom? Currency risk is with the Reliance, Indian company. Currency risk is with the Indian company, because if the currency depreciates, he have to give more Indian rupee. Now there is if this Reliance, if the Indian company or the Reliance, if he is lucky, this can also happen. This can also happen in the sense that imagine the dollar appreciates and have become 55 rupees. $1 becoming 55 rupees. Then he is lucky. How? Then he have to pay back only $20,000 means he can pay back with, he require only 11 lakh. He require only 11 lakh to give $20,000. Now the risk is with the Indian company. The risk is the Indian company who issued bond. Now, so this is the problem, this is the specialty of external commercial borrowing in the sense that currency risk is with the bond issuer. What do you mean by currency risk? Indian currency can depreciate or appreciate. If it depreciate, like in the case of 65 and 70, the Indian corporate will lose. But at the same time, if Indian currency appreciate, like in the case of $55, then the company may benefit. But we don't know what will happen to the Indian rupee after a certain period of time, especially after 5 years or 10 years. So try to understand, in the case of external commercial borrowing, try to understand the specialty of external commercial borrowing is that the fund is raised in foreign currency. Here in this case it is dollar, and once it get matured you have to pay back in dollar. So if the currency depreciate, the risk is with the Indian company who issued bond. So currency risk in external commercial borrowing, the important feature of external commercial borrowing is that currency risk. What do you mean by currency risk? The currency of Indian rupee may appreciate or depreciate, and that is a risk for the bond issuer. The currency risk is with the bond issuer. Here in this case, Indian company. Similarly, any foreign currency denominated bond, basically foreign currency convertible bond, we call it a different name. All the foreign currency denominated bond, currency risk is with the bond issuer. So here lies the specialty of Masala bond. In the sense that Masala bond, it is not a foreign currency bond. It is a rupee denominated bond. Since it is a rupee denominated bond, the bond issuer issue currency in Indian rupee. And once it get matured, he have to pay back only in Indian rupee only. Now here now I'll give you the example of Masala bond. Now we will see currency risk is with whom in the case of Masala bond. Now imagine, now try to understand, Masala bond is a corporate bond. Sorry, Masala bond is a rupee denominated bond, in the sense that he is raising fund in Indian rupee and he will pay back in Indian rupee only. Now take the case here. Now take the case of corporate, any company, Indian company, he want to raise 10 lakh. He is going to issue a bond to raise 10 lakh by promising after 2 years he will pay, the promise is he will pay 12 lakh. So he is raising fund for 10 lakh. After 2 years he will pay back 12 lakh. Now once try to understand again this feature. Masala bond are rupee denominated bond. You understood the meaning of rupee denominated bond? Are you? Yes. Why? The bond is issued in Indian rupee, and once it get matured it will be paid back in Indian rupee only. So that's why it is called rupee denominated bond. Now to whom it is issued? It is issued to overseas buyer. Now think about a foreigner. He will not be having Indian rupee in his hand. Now what he have to do? He have to go to a foreign exchange market, convert his foreign currency into Indian rupee. Conversion means converting one currency into another. So if he is a American citizen who is having dollar, he have to convert the dollar into Indian rupee and then give it to the corporate to purchase this corporate bond. Now here in this 10 lakh corporate bond, imagine like this. This American investor, US investor, dollar is at that time $1 is 60 rupee. Now for this fellow to purchase a 10 lakh Masala bond, he require, if for once when the dollar is 60 rupee, he requires only 16,666.6, and approximately I made it 667. So he require only, if he has this much of dollar, he can purchase this corporate bond for 10 lakh. Now what is his expectation? He is expecting that rupee will be stable, and after 2 years he will get 12 lakh, and then he will convert this 12 lakh again. If he want to take back that money, he will convert this 12 lakh Indian rupee, because in rupee denominated bond he will get back only in Indian rupee. He will convert that 12 lakh into, it was his expectation. Expectation is that he is investing in this much dollar, and his expectation is that after 2 years he will get $20,000. So this the investor, the overseas buyer, is thinking that after 2 years, by investing in Masala bond, he will get this much, and this will be his profit. How much? This will be the difference, will be his profit. Somewhere around 3,300 something is his profit. But after 2 years, Indian rupee have depreciated. Indian rupee after 2 years, imagine a case in which Indian rupee depreciated to 65 rupees. Now what is the promise for the Masala bond issuer, Indian company? He said that he will pay back only in Indian rupee. How much he will pay back? He will pay back 12 lakh. Now since the Indian rupee have depreciated to 65, the 12 lakh equivalent is 18,461. The bond issuer, the Indian company, he will be giving only 12 lakh. Now with this, this US investor, what he will do? He will convert this 12 lakh for $65, for 65 rupees, and he will get only 18,461. His expectation was he will be getting 20,000, but rupee depreciated, he is getting only 18,461. So here in this case, this is the most important specialty of Masala bond. Currency risk is with the, not with the bond issuer, but with the buyer or investor. This is the most important specialty of Masala bond. Currency risk is with the overseas buyer or the investor. Now take the example of, imagine that dollar have become, Indian rupee again depreciated to 70 rupees. Then for 12 lakh equivalent is $17,142. So who is the benefiter here? So here so once the currency is depreciating, try to understand that it is a risk for the investor. So this is the most important core thing about Masala bond. Since it is a rupee denominated bond, the currency risk lies with the investor or overseas buyer. Now you tell me, now if the currency risk is with the investor, why should a foreign investor or overseas buyer should buy Masala bond? Don't worry, this is only an explanation. This will not happen. Currency will not depreciate like this in India, because Indian government and especially RBI will ensure that the foreign Indian rupee value will be stable. So don't worry regarding that. So that for your understanding only I explained, given this example. Now you will not forget what you mean by currency risk. Earlier, if in a foreign, this is a very important way, in a foreign, now compare a foreign currency denominated bond, and a rupee denominated bond. Foreign currency denominated bond and a rupee denominated bond. In a foreign currency denominated bond, currency risk is with the, in a foreign currency denominated, currency risk is with the bond issuer. Who issues bond? Currency risk is the bond issuer. In a rupee denominated bond, it is bond buyer, or here in this case overseas buyer or the investor is having the currency risk. So be very clear with that. I explained the concept. Now in order to make this Masala bond attractive, both the government and the RBI have taken several steps. One of the steps taken by the finance ministry, especially from the government side, is that it has it has reduced the tax. It has reduced the withholding tax. It has reduced the withholding tax from 20% to 5% for masala bond buyer. I told you now it's a very good avenue. Now take the case of a corporate. Earlier, if they want to raise fund for their business activities, they have option of they can take money, borrow money from the bank. They can issue bond in the local market. Then they have one more avenue now. They can issue bond outside the country in the form of masala bond without having any currency risk. So to support this avenue for raising fund for the especially for the corporate, what the finance ministry have done, the finance ministry have reduced the withholding tax from 20% to 5%. Already I have discussed this concept, withholding tax. It's nothing but it is the interest income. Withholding tax, the bond buyer, he will be having an income from the interest. The tax the government imposes for the interest income for these overseas buyers is withholding tax. So if this withholding tax is reduced, there will be more investors to buy masala bond. So this is one initiative taken by the government to promote masala bond. They have reduced the withholding tax from 20% to 5%. Second thing is, if there is any capital gain, due to rupee appreciation, see, don't worry, those students who are not knowing about appreciation and depreciation, we will be discussing this concept in external sector, don't worry regarding that. Now, imagine a case. See, here I explain this concept in relation to rupee depreciating. Rupee become depreciating to 65 and 70. Think about this. Rupee appreciating and becoming 50 rupees. Imagine a situation like this. $1 is 50 rupees after 2 years. Now, rupee have appreciated. Since the rupee have appreciated, this fellow have to get 12 lakh rupee. So for 12 lakh, if it is 50 rupee, now tell me how much he will get. He will get, for 12 lakh, he will get, if you divide it by 5, how much? Just calculate 20, he will get $24,000. Yes or no? Just calculate it. He will get $24,000. So it is a capital gain. He was expecting only $20,000. Rupee appreciated and got another $4,000 extra. So here again the government is telling that don't worry, even though government knows that rupee will not appreciate like this. That's why they promised that if the rupee appreciate, the capital gain, we will not impose any tax for capital gain. No tax for capital gain if rupee appreciate. So by giving them these two favors, in the sense that by reducing the withholding tax from 20 to 5%, so that the interest income from this bond will be, the tax on interest income will be less, and by saying that if in case rupee appreciate and if you get any capital gain, we will not charge any tax from you, capital gain tax from you. So by doing so, the finance ministry is promoting masala bond. At the same time, Reserve Bank of India also have ensured that the minimum tenure for issuing masala bond have been reduced from earlier it was 5 years to 3 years. So that for a 3 year also, for 3 year a corporate can issue a masala bond outside the country and raise fund. So both RBI and the finance ministry is supporting masala bond because currency risk is not with the Indian company, the currency risk is with the investor. So since the risk is with the investor, the government have given lot of favors by reducing withholding tax and saying that if there is any capital gain due to rupee appreciation, we will not tax you. So these are the things, concept related with masala bond. It's very important. It's there in the study material. Please go and read it. It's very important. Now, regarding the history of masala bond, it's very important. History of masala bond. Now, way back in 2014, way back in 2014. You might have heard about, or we will be discussing more in when we discuss World Bank. IFC, International Financial Corporation, IFC. It's very important, IFC. It is an arm of the, try to understand World Bank is a group of institution which will be studying under external sector. For time being, understand that. International IFC is the private sector, it's a very important term, lending arm of World Bank. IFC is the private sector lending arm. What does it mean? That IFC, which is a arm of World Bank, will only give loan to private sector only, means private companies only. That's why I called IFC is the private sector lending arm of World Bank. What IFC have done in November 2014, have issued a rupee denominated bond, in the London Stock Exchange and raised some fund. So, and while raising this fund, IFC have given a name to this bond. So now try to understand the term Masala have been given by this private sector lending arm of the World Bank. So the name Masala to the rupee denominated bond is given by IFC, which is the private sector lending arm of the World Bank. Now try to understand that IFC gives loan for all the developing countries for developed countries, all the member countries of World Bank. Now try to understand that, don't think that only for India IFC have given a name like Masala bond. Now you know that for Japan, now try to understand, India is very famous for spices, masala. That's why IFC have given the name Masala. Now when you hear the word Japan is famous for samurais. So Japanese currency denominated bond, Japanese currency is yen. IFC have issued yen denominated bond to support Japanese private companies. That bond are called as samurai bond. Similarly for China, yuan denominated bond. It's a very famous, for China it is called dim sum bond. Sorry, panda bond. Panda. You know pandas, when you hear about China, pandas comes to your mind. So panda bonds, it's again Chinese yuan denominated bond issued by IFC, samurai bond. So similarly this nomenclature of Masala bond has been given by IFC to make sure that it's an Indian rupee denominated bond. Now my question is try to understand, IFC started issuing rupee denominated bond, also called as Masala bond, from 2014. Now why UPSC asked a question in 2016? Do you know that there is a question being asked in 2016 from this Masala bond? Anybody? Yes. Now why UPSC have asked a question from IFC Masala bond in August 2016 prelims? Reason is very simple. In March 2016, IFC in March 2016, which is very recently, IFC have issued a 15-year Masala bond to support infrastructural development in India, and it is the longest rupee denominated security issued by IFC till now. Earlier IFC have issued Masala bond for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years and 10 years, but recently in March 2016 it has issued a longest 15-year dated Masala bond. That's why UPSC have asked this question in August 2016 prelims. Try to understand why UPSC asks certain questions, especially current affair. The time period is very important for you. Okay, so recently, now try to understand that, so IFC only given the nomenclature, IFC have raised fund for rupee denominated fund for development. So what the IFC will do, this fund will be given for private sector for infrastructure development in India. It is clearly said that it will be for, this fund is for private sector infrastructure development in India. This is clearly mentioned by IFC while raising fund for basically for infrastructure development in India. Try to be very clear with it. Okay. Now why IFC is again in news into recently also, again try to understand that after IFC have issued Masala bond, RBI also started supporting Indian companies to go and raise fund overseas through Masala bond. Okay, so HDFC Bank have raised fund through Masala bond. HDFC have issued Masala bond. Then recently the public sector NTPC have raised funds. So many companies is now going, a private NBFC Fullerton have gone and raised fund through issuing Masala bond. Recently, November 2016, it's very important. November 2016, British Columbia, which is a Canadian province, it's a province of Canada, have become the first foreign government entity to issue Masala bond. All the Masala bond is issued in London Stock Exchange, which is now a favorite destination for rupee denominated bond. So London Stock Exchange is becoming very famous because here majority of the Masala bonds are issued in London Stock Exchange, and basically all these funds are raised for private sector infrastructure support. So this is the current related thing, and in future also there will be a lot of articles coming on Masala bond. Again I am repeating few things. One, most important thing about when you hear the term Masala bond, what is that? It is a rupee denominated bond. Second thing, it can be issued only to overseas buyer. Third and the most important point is currency risk lies with the investor or this overseas buyer. This is the concept all about Masala bond. Now you are clear with it? Okay. Now we will solve this question. There are two questions. One is UPSC question which was asked in 2016 prelims. Other is our model question which was asked in the class test 8. So we will solve both the questions. First you try to solve the first question, question number 1, which is a prelims question, 2016 prelims question. Read the question carefully. Question says that with reference to IFC Masala bond, see this is the trick here. The question is about not about Masala bond. The question is about IFC Masala bond. The question is about IFC Masala bond. Be very clear with it. Sometimes seen in the news, which of the statement given below is so are correct. Now the first statement says that International Financial Corporation or IFC, which offers this bond, yes, IFC Masala bond is offered by IFC only, is an arm of the World Bank. We know that, everybody knows that IFC is an arm of the World Bank. So first statement is correct. Now regarding the second statement, they are the rupee denominated bond. We all know that IFC Masala bond is a rupee denominated bond and are a source of debt financing. Till here it is correct. It's a debt financing only. It's a debt financing instrument. Now lies the trick here for the public and private sector. Read the question statement again. They are rupee denominated bond and are a source of debt financing for the public and private sector. Now many of the people got confused. It's a very tricky statement. See, if this question was about Masala bond, if this question was only about Masala bond, the statement is correct. Masala bond can be issued, it's a rupee denominated bond. It's a rupee denominated bond and are a source of debt financing. It can be issued by both public sector and private sector. I told you already, NTPC, which is a public sector company, have issued it. Private sector HDFC have issued it. But this question is not about Masala bond. This question is about IFC Masala bond. IFC Masala bond are rupee denominated bond, are a source of debt financing. What? Now tell me, IFC is what? IFC is the private sector lending arm of the World Bank, and IFC will give this fund only for the private sector, not for anyone. So here in this question, the term public made the statement wrong. This is only for this IFC Masala bond. This IFC Masala bond is raised by IFC to support private sector infrastructural development in India, not for the public sector. It will not give this fund for the public sector. So this statement is wrong, and many of the people have got confused with this public and private. Try to be very clear, IFC is the private sector lending arm of the World Bank. So because of that, it will only support private sector projects only. Here in this case, it has till now it has given only for private sector infrastructure projects. So answer is 1 only. Second statement is wrong only because it's a very tough question, because till it's a very in the concept, all the concepts were clear. So more than a masala bond question, it was a question on IFC. So answer is 1 only. Now answer the model question, which was again a CT 8 question, class test 8th question. Here in this question, first statement says that masala bond are the rupee denominated bond, fine, issued to overseas buyer, correct, aimed at investment into India's infrastructure needs. There is nothing wrong in it. It's basically for infrastructure need only. So first statement is correct in this question. Second is, these bonds are issued only by IFC, an arm of World Bank. Now tell me, is this statement is correct? No. There is a keyword here. What is that? The word only. It says that only IFC will issue these bonds. Is it correct? No, we already discussed. British Columbia have issued IFC masala bond, which is a first foreign entity to issue that. I already told you, HDFC have issued masala bond. NTPC have issued masala bond. Fullerton have recently issued masala bond. And still so many private companies is going to issue masala bond. So it is not only, see, IFC is the first person to issue rupee denominated bond and given the name masala bond, but it is not the only person to issue masala bond. There are other players, including the foreign government entities are issuing masala bond. As given example, British Columbia, and then Indian private companies have already gone to London Stock Exchange and issued bond. So here the second statement is wrong, because it's not only IFC, even any private entities and even anyone can issue masala bond and can use that fund for India's infrastructure development. So second statement is wrong. So hopefully I think that this is, see, now try to understand how UPSC asks question and what you need to be very clear when you read each statement. Okay, hopefully now be very clear with that. Go home and read the material, and now any question related with masala bond, you can answer it. Thank you.